So first of all, welcome and good evening, everyone. We are pleased to have with us tonight Michele Agius, which I've known for quite a number of years now, and it has been impressive seeing his growth over the years as a professional in the photography field. Michele is a very avid traveler, and you can see this from his photography, and actually has quite a nice perspective, and you can see his work shot from the air, underwater, and everything in between. And as we said, travels around quite a lot. But what stands out is the level of his photography, his compositions, is always his ever-going search to improve and to find the best light and composition. And I think that has been quite evident in his evolution over the years. So without further ado, I will give over to Michele Agius. And again, thank you for being with us, Michele.
Thank you for the introduction. So, today I'm going to be discussing how to maybe be more creative when it comes to photography, but mainly when it comes maybe to over-photographed locations. So I'll skip this since he already did this. The first thing, obviously, is planning when it comes to photography. I mean, we go to places which have been photographed so many times and by so many different people that it's becoming, even with smartphones and all, it's becoming difficult maybe to be original. So I think maybe one of the most important thing is knowing your location. I think in Malta it's easy now to know your location. If you live in Malta, basically, at least, it's easy maybe to go there before and set your location. So, for example, this is a concert I worked at. This is a normal angle anyone could have got. But I noticed that there was the bell tower of the church, and before the event made sure I was one of the photographers of this concert, so that helped, of course. I made sure I can get exclusive access, which got me, in my opinion, a much better angle. So, I mean, this is work related and maybe entertainment related, but it can reflect any kind of job or any kind of thing. When I shoot, I mean, for the fun of it, maybe when I go out on a walk or a hike and so on, I usually go onto Google Maps, first of all, and familiarize myself with the location. Of course, in Malta, I mean, it might be easy, and maybe for some it might not. Some might have never visited the location. So I'd use the satellite imagery, which is available free of charge on Google Maps, and scout the location, see if there are any places I haven't been to or which part I might be, and so on. The good thing about Google Maps is that there are also the panoramas, the street view, and photos which show you the location better. So this is Il Fawara in Malta, and through Google Maps I noticed that there were these caves. So on the left, I would say I shot myself as a bit of a boring image, whilst on the right, maybe, at least to me, I thought it would be a more interesting image and a less seen view. Not many might know there was a cave, or many would have only seen it from street view. Another thing which I do often, especially even when traveling and not knowing the place, is going through social media. Social media, there's a lot available, so if you're going, I would almost also know the place from before. You can see vlogs on YouTube, TikTok nowadays, Facebook, Instagram. It's so easy that you can just click on the location and see what was been done before, any spots, any viewpoints, and so on. So that's another thing. Now, this might be ironic, but we're speaking about creativity, but I feel like maybe social media is also killing our creativity. Sometimes we're just shooting for likes, we're just shooting for attention. We think this one is performing better, this one is performing worse. So we kind of limit ourselves to shooting just for that, which is not ideal. We're comparing work with others, at least I do this a lot myself, and it dampens morale, we copy others, and as I said, we focus on likes, which is not the ideal thing to do. So, I mean, recently I've been focusing on, at least in photography, of doing, and I mean, in my life as well, of doing more of what makes me happy. I've tried to focus on certain niches and things that, at the end of the day, are going to make me happy, not someone else that will judge it off a phone. And this happened, maybe I made the most out of the pandemic. There was no time, we couldn't maybe go out by then, there was no nightlife. I am still focused on doing that maybe. So I had to see, I had more time on my hands and I saw, what can I do with this? So I bought a kayak and I felt that this was maybe a new way of showcasing Malta and the beauty that Malta has. I think it was one of the most original ways of showing off Malta, places maybe people have never seen, viewpoints people might have never seen either. Through my photography, I want people to appreciate Malta more, and I felt like this was a very good way of showing it. Sometimes, unfortunately, maybe people don't appreciate the beauty and the possibilities and adventures Malta has to offer. And it's through photography that I want to evoke that message. So this is, I don't know if anyone recognized, but this is Cell Moon. This was shot in winter, and it was something else as well that maybe limits us, that maybe sometimes we only want the best conditions, we only want blue skies, beautiful sunsets, but I'm quite fond of the images I took on this day because the water was very calm and it showed off a different Malta than the usual picture postcard moments. And this was a bit of a longer trip. We left from Malta all the way to Comino. It was shot in April, it was during the pandemic, there weren't that many people. So I think it was a very good way of showing off the Blue Lagoon, which in my opinion is one of the most photographed spots on the island. This is Anchor Bay as well. Maybe sometimes you might have to get wet, at least this is what I focus on. It's the niche I've started to focus on. Anchor Bay, Popeye Village. Most of the time people just drive the car to the edge and snap an image and that's that. I decided to go the step further and get closer to the traditional boats, the Lutsu, get closer to land and show off the beautiful sea that it also has to offer. Now, another thing which I love to do is put people in the images. On the left is Blue Lagoon again, and I feel like it obviously adds more life, more interest, so maybe sometimes it might be just that simple thing to be more creative and different, of getting a friend to help you out and do a simple pose or whatever. I also got to do more scuba diving. Now, Malta has a lot of this to offer. A lot of people maybe see Malta, they just see the beaches, they see Valletta and so on. So during the pandemic, I mean, it's still here unfortunately, but in 1 year I managed to dive more than I had ever dived in the 3 years before. And I bought an underwater housing for my Nikon D850, and I started to dive with it and snap more images of Malta underwater. So this is the same wreck, P29 in Chirkewa, something maybe people might not know of the beautiful wrecks and dive sites Malta has to offer. Again, this is the inland sea. In my opinion, maybe a lot of people are just going to see it from land, so I see it as my mission to show off the place. I think also, like during this dive, I went down with two friends. Of course, you can either just dive and snap away and hope that something happens, or you can plan ahead. In this case, in the next shot, which I'll show you, which is one of my favorite dive shots, out of experience of knowing this dive site, I told them where to stop and how to pose, and it turned out as one of my most favorite images of diving in Malta. There's this, I think, around 80-meter tunnel which takes you from one side to the other, and I feel like it shows off one of Malta's and Gozo's most beautiful sites. Now, if going into more depth, I'm going to do a sort of case study. This is Eindhoven. It's my favorite location for peace and for nature in Malta, so I go there very regularly. We're all guilty of having taken these two standard images. I mean, all right, they're mine, so I'm biased. They're nice, but I know everyone has taken a photo from the steps and of sunset. So this is where maybe Google Maps and researching it properly goes into place. Now, this is a bit maybe abstract. It might not be recognizable immediately, that's Eindhoven, but here again, it's the importance of people in a photo. I told my friends to walk there, and it added that element and so much more interest to the lines and a whole other story to it. A new viewpoint in Malta, of course, with a small island, but we've managed to find this new viewpoint of Eindhoven, a new angle to show it off. And again, I had him standing up there so that people visualize it more and imagine that they are there themselves. And again, this time a totally different aspect and viewpoint of Eindhoven. I collaborated with a free diver, and I didn't just want to show underwater only. I wanted to get these half shots to give context and to show off the place rather than just the sea. Another thing that maybe social media has helped is finding people, finding models. If you don't have friends in the industries or just maybe to meet up with, it's so easy to find a free diver, to find models and so on, that all you have to do is drop them a message and you can collaborate with some incredible talent on the island. I think that's one of the benefits of being such a small island. Everyone's up for it. People want for the stuff for their portfolio and so on. And it's going to offer such a different image. I mean, just go for it. Just if you're scrolling, you see someone, even this foreign that's here. I've teamed up with mountain bikers and so on. I mean, I just told them, listen, do you want to meet up? And they were up for it. So that's another thing of getting that different shot. Now this is the beautiful light and sand that Malta has to offer. So sometimes maybe when you're swimming, your eyes are closed, so you don't even appreciate how beautiful it is. So hopefully my photography helped show it off. And sometimes even from the air, the beautiful colors that Malta and Eindhoven has to offer. I think these are some of my favorite photos as well of the area, the different textures, colors, and so on. Many people might not see these angles in their life. They might, from when you're walking, you're not going to see all these 3 photos were taken with a drone. So sometimes you have to think like a bird and head up there and show Malta from the totally different angle. I think the technology of drones has revolutionized photography, the different angles you manage to get, the different aspects, and things that you've never imagined you'd see before are now all over Instagram and on the world in anyway. Now, speaking about aerial photography, I think aerial photography is probably one of the best ways to differentiate, to show off a different angle. You can either do it with a drone, or something I've loved to start doing is go on plane rides. So, as plane, I don't mean the usual big Air Malta planes, but a tiny 2-seater plane. These are some videos of the experience, so if you're scared of heights, it's not for the light-hearted. It can feel like a roller coaster at times, but the results you can get is pretty amazing. The amazing thing about this plane that I team up with, if you can notice, is that there is no door. And for photography, that's amazing. Now there are other companies which have maybe windows and so on, which make things even more difficult. Now, when I go up on the plane, I shoot with 2 bodies, of course, tied very tightly onto me, which make things harder because of the door. I use a wide lens, not very wide, so it's a 24 to 70 millimeter lens and a 70 to 200. So many think that you need a very wide lens, but of course you're going to be high up, so I wouldn't recommend going with anything wider than 24 millimeters. This was in fact shot probably with 24 millimeters. I also end up, if I take 1,000 photos, I'm only going to be taking 200 with the 70 to 200 zoom lens. So the 24 to 70 is going to be on my main body, and I'm going to be shooting with that mostly. This is a very clear example of how I think you can get a very different viewpoint and creative image. So this is the Rolex Middle Sea race. It attracts hundreds of photographers. Most of them are going to be at Valletta. They're going to get very similar images, but I had the idea of hopping onto a plane and showing more of the context. So I managed in this shot to get around 100 sailing boats. I got all the participants in there, and I managed to show Valletta, and this is probably one of my as well favorite shots of the Grand Harbor. This is Gozo. In my opinion, this manages to show how small of an island it is. It's like a one whole rock popping out of the sea. You can see all the hills, Vittoriosa, Cittadella, and the villages. An angle maybe as well that how many people have seen Gozo from this area, from this angle. So it's a clear example of how original aerial photography can be. Now, of course, before you hop onto the plane, you should speak with the pilot, have a set route. I think I've gone around 5 times now, so I feel I've got a clear idea of what I want to achieve on each flight. Also, I think as a photographer, you need to know the light. I've always seemed to go with sunset flights. Of course, you're gonna get, as in this image as well, those golden hues and colors. And it's also going to be a bit more quiet. So this wasn't obviously in summer, because if not, it would have been full of boats. It's on a spring day, and it's Blue Lagoon as well. So this is another perfect example. Valletta. This is possibly the biggest landmark of Malta. It's on every billboard or logo. People love to use this dome, and I thought it was a great example of showing it differently, showing the size of the dome and the context, because a lot of people might see it from Slema and not know. People seem to confuse that St. Paul's Church is part of the Anglican Cathedral and so on. So that compressed image from Slema confuses people, so this is good to show some context. Now as well, this is a perfect example of why I choose sunset flights. The golden light, the walls shining gold as well. So I'm not going to get those very harsh shadows. In fact, in the beginning of the flight, I tend to choose locations which I know I might not get the best shot at, because when I go there, I get these harsh, the harsh sunlight, the harsh shadows, and so on. Now, you might be asking, why should I go on a plane and not use a drone? Of course, you can get some good option or some good angles with a drone. The way I feel it, that on a plane, you're there seeing it yourself, you're seeing the beauty of the islands. And I think you have more control as well. With a drone, of course, you're moving it around with a remote. Whereas with a plane, you can get that more height. You can tell the pilot, and you can just focus on getting the shot. Of course, you have a better camera, so you have different lenses. You can zoom in. You have more resolution, and so on. Sometimes it's also good to go on a bit of a windy day, because you're going to get more movement in the sea. You're going to get more of an interesting thing in the shot. This is St. Julian's, and it's a good example to show off how the skyline is changing here. Many people are going to obviously see it from land, and this is a good way of showing how St. Julian's is changing. Now, if it's for the better or the worse, that's for people to judge. Again, I always make it a point to fly around the Grand Harbour more than one time. I think it's one of the most beautiful locations in Malta, and the aerial perspective of it is absolutely incredible. Again, this is Blue Lagoon. This was shot at 24mm. Now, in this case, the pilot was flying lower than in many of the shots. This is all up to you. I mean, sometimes the lower perspective is much nicer, in my opinion. The grid layout of Senglia. Another thing I love to show off is this different perspective. At the end of the, I mean, I'm repeating it, but it's the sole purpose of this, of showing something different that people haven't seen. The iconic grid patterns that Valletta and Senglia have to offer. It's a perfect way of showing them off. Now, it's also ideal to shoot for a purpose. Some weeks ago, I left out and went on a plane again, and I wanted to show how development is taking over in Malta. So we went over certain locations with many you would ignore because they are not that beautiful to shoot, and I gathered some photos of how, unfortunately, our countryside is depleting. So it's important to go to purpose. Sometimes it might be an event like the Middle Sea Race. It might just be to get some nice photos of the Grand Harbour. This time I want to show how overdeveloped some towns are unfortunately becoming. And back to the Grand Harbour. So I think that's a very good idea of maybe they're simple things of being creative, but I think they are simple yet effective ways of showing off this beautiful island that we have. I don't know if there are any questions anyone would like to ask.
Thank you very much, Mitch. A very interesting presentation. If I may ask a question myself, is it that tough to organize a flight on a plane with no doors? And do you have to specifically specify that? And there are a few companies which offer that.
There's one specific one, Buzz Flying. They're great guys. That yes, they're the only ones I believe remove the door. You tell them from beforehand and they'd remove it. Of course, you have to be a bit adventurous and courageous, because if not, it will get scary. I mean, if you get scared on a bump on a big Boeing, this is going to be a whole different thing. So, but it's fun. It's very good fun.
And I think so you would be harnessed, obviously, and as you said, the equipment would need to be
it's very safe
harnessed to you, because otherwise you'll run problems. And I hope your cameras are insured, obviously.
The difficulty with that is, of course, the cameras need to be tied on quickly, tightly, so sometimes they might get tangled up and so on. So it can make things a bit more difficult, but it's always better than having a window and having to combat the reflections and those things. Really, you're free. You have the wing is above you as well, so there's all that is gone with the door off.
Thank you. Any more questions for Michele? I think you stunned everyone into silence.
Very good.
Thank you, Michele. Very beautiful images. I was always impressed with your earlier images. As you said, it takes some planning, but then the result speaks for itself, basically. And yes, a drone can show similar shots, but as you said, it's not the same thing. A drone, okay, you're controlling it from the land, but when you're up there experiencing it, it's a whole different kettle of fish. And as you said, it makes a big difference.
It's a very humbling experience, and you start to appreciate Malta in a better way. Maybe sometimes I'm a bit too patriotic, but it's a beautiful experience which I think everyone should do, especially photography wise. I mean, they're totally different angles, and they're beautiful.
So in a way, as you said, you're taking shots and preserving how it is today, and as you said, it's changing so rapidly, and most probably in such a negative way that those images in the future will have much more value because they're showcasing something which is almost completely disappeared.
Sometimes maybe when I sift through my photo libraries, I'd find a shot which was beautiful, and then I notice that that building is not there or something else is there. So I think, yes, I mean, it's a good, I might be shooting for posterity and all, and I mean, hopefully one day follow your footsteps and have a book with all of them in it.
When you wish, I can help you with that, no problem.
Thank you.
So unless there are any more questions for Michele, we can close here.